I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee, with me, Giles Sibbald, is the music podcast that does music a bit differently. I'm talking to some incredible musicians, DJs and producers about how they use an experimental mindset to fuel their own creativity, pursue new challenges, overcome fears, bounce back from mistakes.
The arts and cultural scene would be so much more impoverished if it weren't for my guest today. In fact, Irvine Welsh has described her as the greatest cultural beacon this planet has produced. She uses the experience she's gained in the media sector to offer, like inclusive cultural alternatives to those who want to do the things that they want to do in the way that they want. So for me, it's about the power of us as free individuals, not as in the kind of straitjacket of institutionalised, homogenised culture machine. She's the founder of Cold Lips, Ambit, and now the author of her debut novel, Psychomachia. It's an honour to welcome Kirsty Allison to the show. Kirsty, welcome.
Giles, thanks for inviting me on.
Not at all, not at all. So you're up in Hull.
I am. Yeah, I've just done an afternoon show actually.
Wow.
Yeah, a really beautiful. Because Larkin's from here. I had no idea.
No.
I walked out of the train. I've never got a train here before, and I walked out of the station, and there's a sculpture of Philip Larkin and all his poetry on the floor.
I had no idea.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I mean, I got a tour here the other day by a poet called Dean Wilson, who's published Ball, and he was showing me the sort of more colourful side of Hull.
Yeah.
Into an old furniture shop and stuff. But yeah, it's a cool place. It's still broken in places, and that's really nice to see living in London, where it's all becoming so polished and super money. So yeah, I like to pivot, the geography of being somewhere else. It keeps you moving, doesn't it? And we've not had much of that in COVID. So it's suddenly kind of, I mean, really, it's funny. I was just thinking this on the way up I probably would have gone to do a gig in Berlin instead of going to do one in Scotland or something. So it's just kind of, it's not, England's brilliant. It is incredible. And it's good to hear different accents.
Oh yeah. Good bit of regional accent for sure. Yeah. Is there what's the kind of like the art scene like in Hull? Is it?
I think I'm sitting in the middle of it actually at Wrecking Ball Press. I mean, Shane Rhodes, who set Wrecking Ball up in the 90s, he's a force. He promotes gigs here.
Yeah.
He set up this publishing company after doing his own sort of collection called The Rita to begin with. And he's published brilliant people. So he's like the force that I'm aware of. And just doing this afternoon gig at this open mic just now, invited me down to do it. It's great to just hear so many people reading and so much poetry, and there's poetry everywhere. And it's just kind of great to hear spaces where that's allowed. And they've built a new arts centre in lockdown, Wrecking Ball Press. Of their shop, which is quite like rough trade. If you imagine sort of the rough trade shops, it's got a lot of records, great selection of books, coffee, bar, and then upstairs it's got this beautiful venue, which I'm playing again soon with Johny from Band of Holy Joy.
Okay, yeah.
I'm with my band Vagrant Lovers on the 5th of August, which is really soon. I didn't realise how soon it is. We're doing a little tour.
Weeks to go.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's like I've been waiting my whole life for July the 5th and my novel coming out. And then suddenly it's like, oh, wow, there's other stuff going on too. So, yeah, it's like buses, my life at the moment, really.
I was talking to Beth Jeans Horton the other day, and she was saying, about talking about, sort of smaller towns, about how you're going to get really, really, interesting and good creativity there, because it's almost like a kind of scarcity that when you live in London, you fail to sometimes forget, because it's such a richness of facilities and things that are sort of going on. And in sort of smaller towns, there's perhaps, not as many venues, and it kind of creates this sort of, I guess, a real kind of like DIY. It's like, well, we've got to create. There's a scarcity. We've just got to create.
I mean, that's why everybody goes to London too, isn't it? And I think, you know, London gets a bit of a bad rep as being somewhere that's kind of centric for culture. We all have to fight as hard as anyone else.
True. Yeah.
Because there's so many people trying to make it in London.
True. Yeah.
So people do forget the volume of or whatever. But you know, I think the culture of cities is that they can get a bit careerist, obviously, because we're trying to pay rent.
Yeah.
So that becomes the focus. And obviously, you know, London being the Hollywood of Europe, or not Europe anymore, but it's where people used to come to make their name, isn't it? So but you know, the whole geography is changing massively by the second at the moment. So yeah, I find I love it, you know, I love London as well. But you know, then I've done shows, say, like with Clock Tower Music in Bridport, and it's a really good, you know, he's a great record buyer, record seller. And he did something out of passion of doing a fringe festival to the Bridport Arts Festival, which is very official. And he put us on, and he sold it out because he wanted to, and he wanted to demonstrate that. So it's always people at the bottom of it that give a really beautiful, they're you know, that beauty of what an individual offers.
So I'm gonna for those that are listening on just to the audio, I'm holding up a copy of Kirstys book, which is a fantastic Dayglow pink cover. It's absolutely amazing. And I've got
have you opened it up, Giles? Have you flipped it open and looked at have you looked on the flip side of the
inside covers?
Open up the inside cover. Open up the inside cover and look at the hardback underneath, the actual hardback.
No, I haven't. Wow. Look at that. So for those on you that are watching the video, you can see that. Wow, amazing. That's incredible. So you got some pure evil stuff in there as well. That's an incredible cover. That's something that I skipped by totally. I missed that.
The designer Stephen Barrett that I've been working with on Ambit, who sort of he really went to all lengths to use that foil. Yeah. And you know, to make it look really 90s.
Yeah.
And those flyers are from my own flyer collection. Wow. And so there's like a little story to everything within that's used within the design on those books.
Yeah. So I mean, so this is your debut novel.
Yeah.
What's the tell us the story sort of behind it, and
oh man,
or a kind of I imagine there's a big backstory to it.
Well, it's my life is the backstory to it, really. And I mean, I think that's the launch point for any fiction, is hopefully, if you're doing it right, that you've got something burning that you want to say. And it's just taken me a long time to articulate that into being this book, really. And it's set in the 90s. It's about a girl who's so wasted, she doesn't know if she's murdered someone or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And it goes through the party scene of the music industry and working in fashion and magazines, and underpinned by dead rock stars and all the dead rock stars until sort of 1994, when it sort of starts. The last one mentioned is Kurt Cobain. It doesn't go up to Amy Winehouse, for example.
Yeah.
But it kind of, as a journalist, I've researched those hard, and that kind of, those are the religious icons that the characters frame their life around.
Yeah.
So that's the premise, really, is that, you know, when you have dead rock stars as your icons, what happens? And what happens when that music industry is powered by a man who's not very nice? And it's about stigma too. So it's about mental health before the wellness industry, before we spoke about it, when we were hedonistically dealing with our mental health stigmas. Yeah. And when rape and Me Too dealt with by taking phenomenal amounts of drugs.
Yeah.
So it's set in that world in the 90s when you know, personally, I thought that we would get to 2000 and it would be like tomorrow's world, when we did just walk into a room and the lights would go on and we'd be living on space stations.
Yeah.
It seemed so futuristic and far away, and it was like that Clockwork Orange, not Clockwork Orange, more of a, you know, like a 2001 sort of AD thing.
Yeah.
Really thought that it, you know, I thought everything was going to change. And I think it's also, you know, the disappointment of Acid House, the dream being squashed by the government.
Yeah.
So that was defining in my own life. Just kind of every hippie dream that I'd idealized growing up.
Yeah.
Peace and love and no war and no weapons. Just seeing the government take away that freedom with the Criminal Justice Act. Kind of devastating. So that kind of led to the Britpop commercialization of music and the laddism, that kind of when people were trying to feel their identities again and work out what was going on. And although that gets marketed as being quite a sexist thing now, you know, like with Oasis or whatever, they become these kind of totems of manhood. But actually, it's just a lot of people trying to find themselves with Britpop. But where that went was into heroin chic. And certainly, you know, that's the arc of the novel.
Yeah. How did you, I mean, it's interesting you sort of talk, you know, about people finding themselves in sort of identity, and how did you yourself, you know, over that sort of time, for example, when the you know, like let's say that the government, you know, kind of like, you know, started to, you know, kind of crush down on you know, the sort of the freedom, how did you feel your, you know, your own identity sort of changing over that time?
I mean, I was still a teenager, so I don't think I was analysing it. I just embraced everything, really. It was, you know, in retrospect, and I think that's what this book does, is it does kind of deal with it with hindsight, but yet you're in it still. And yeah, it's kind of it's a kind of crazy thing to analyze now, but yeah, I don't know. I found it quite traumatic ultimately, but then, you know, was saved by music. So, you know, the techno scene got harder, and kind of the Chemical Brothers. I found myself going to, you know, like the Heavenly Social Nights, which got journalism. So that was, you know, very, very fortunate, and I was in the right place at the right time, and, you know, then I met loads of great people. Had a really good 90s, and, you know, DJing in Manumission and playing with Howard Marks and Irvine Welsh, and living quite a dream, really. I was getting paid properly. I was, you know, writing professionally. Then I crashed.
I mean, I've read probably about a third, probably maybe just sort of shy of a third of the book. And I mean, just from that third, I mean, like you said, you know, it's written almost as if it is in the present, and you can sort of feel yourself in there. And it really is. I mean, sort of visually, I can see what's going on. You know, you know, it's written like that. I think it's written fantastically well, because it just immerses you into that, and obviously starts, you know, in a extremely sort of dark, you know, sort of situation, and you know, but the way that it immerses you into that kind of scene, and the, you know, kind of like the sort of that kind of rape culture, that sort of sexism, you know, and is pretty brutal. And, you know, like you said, I think you know, the way it's written just, you know, kind of like really kind of grabs you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think that, I mean, I'm obviously sort of looking forward to the, you know, to the rest of it. How did sorry?
we're in the Ibiza bit now, right?
I'm gonna get into the they've just
another level in Ibiza, actually. Yeah.
So you've been taking it easy so far. Then it gets it really sort of cranks.
Yeah, they've just had a really nice night together, but it's not gonna last. Yeah. Yeah.
So this it took you like a long time to sort of to get your mind straight to writing this.
I don't think it was that my mind wasn't straight. I mean, I started drafting it in 2005, and I was working at the BBC.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was quite straight, but I think I hadn't dealt with the stuff that. I mean, it's interesting. The publisher, I can hear watching a football or something behind, but they've called it dark and disassociative, and I think that's really what it is. And the big journey for me was kind of starting drafting it, trying to understand what I was traumatized about, and having to turn that into entertainment and something that someone can read and find joy in, and find that balance between kind of the horror and the beauty of youth, whilst being wise on the other side. And that's been the hardest. That's why it's taken so long. It's just being able to add the wisdom to it without that taking away from it feeling like it's young.
Yeah.
And also, actually forming it from personal experience into characters. That takes a long time, and have to kind of develop and learn what fiction is. True. It's a huge, it's been a huge journey, and I haven't done a creative writing course. I had the first bits of it published in 2007 in Ambit, and that wasn't ready at that point. So I think the bits that I had published there, they're not the same as the bits that have made the cut.
Yeah.
So it's it is editing. I've been very lucky not to have a deadline on it, so that I can develop it. And I've learned about writing because my writing before was commercial, and it was in a house style of wherever I was writing.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, like I was, if you're writing for whatever, you have to write in that style, particularly when you're a young woman. You don't get the opportunity. Well, actually, a few places did, they let me loose, and I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, but that wasn't exclusive. So a lot of, if I'm writing about beige jumpers for Marks and Spencer's, you have to do that. So it's,
Did you find that with that almost kind of mainstream journalism experience, that you had to sort of unlearn it to?
Yeah, that's when I started doing poetry, Giles. That's when I started doing poetry, was to smash up. The thing I'd learned. You get so caught up in is that right? Is that not right? Is that a 5-word sentence, and kind of whatever it is that, it's taken me a lifetime to come back round to being a confident writer again, actually.
It's interesting. I mean, I was when I was a kid, I played the cello, and I took lessons, and I went through the whole kind of grade system, sort of taking exams and things like that, and I wondered after that you get used to sort of working in that framework, and you feel that those are rules, and that you can't break out of them, and that in a way kind of which is, I guess, in a way sort of similar to what you had with your writing. I felt that there were some things that I couldn't break. I shouldn't go outside of this sort of framework, and it's almost like that's what you've learned. And
it's almost like jamming and jazz, isn't it? It's kind of like some people don't, are comfortable doing different, you have to create your own framework and work out what that is. And it's taken me a while to pontificate. I mean, this book is very hard laboured, but you don't read. What was beautiful last night, actually, I had a very tiny little celebration for it.
Yeah.
And what was really beautiful was a friend had been doing his yoga in the day, and he said that he'd read the first pages when he was doing his yoga, and his girlfriend was saying, "What were you doing? You're not supposed to do that," But anyway, he was reading it, and he just said it doesn't read like it's taken that long. And for me, that's the biggest compliment, because that's what you're trying to achieve as a writer, is the communication.
Yeah.
Someone from the beginning of a story to an end of a story. And that's what, you know, that's what good journalism does. So, and any story, you know, that, and particularly in these days, how do we get people to read when we've got flashing lights of our phones?
Yeah.
Or listen to anything, getting attention for anything, because everyone's so caught up in their own reflection. It's very difficult to avoid and just find yourself the peace to sit down and enjoy reading a book. I mean, yeah. I mean,
what do you think you learnt about yourself over the period of writing it?
Oh, so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say that I'm a different person from the person I was trying to understand.
Oh wow. Okay.
I mean, I was blaming other people at the beginning of this, and it was everybody else's fault. The realization, the self-realization of it actually being a physical book now. I mean, I've just been signing books and doing all of that and seeing it on social and you know, popping up and stuff. And the people asking you questions about it and stuff. It's so great. I mean, it's it's this final beauty, really. I just feel very, very self-realized at the moment, finally. And it's been a long journey. I mean, you know, I hadn't started doing yoga probably at the beginning of all of that. You know, I probably didn't. It was probably around that when I started taking it seriously. Actually, no, that would have been the late 90s. Actually, that was kind of when I probably got into doing that. But you know, that practice of sort of centering oneself,
the
spiritual practice that you talk about a lot on here, and kind of, it's taken me a long time, but I think it's a journey of experience, and that's kind of what we're trying to do, isn't it? I mean, going to India. I went to India for the first time in 2003.
Yeah.
Made a film there in 2006. That didn't get released until 2012. So there's always been a lot of other things going on. It's not just been writing that I've been doing. You know, I did a fashion blog, or taking a picture of an outfit every day. But it's all been trying to find myself, I think, and sort of work out what freedom is. But I've come back to knowing that actually I'm a writer, and freedom is doing that. You know, I love performing as well. You know, I love that's a physical isn't it? But you know, the actual practice of writing for me is it's unlimited, because it's astral in sort of how much you can pull and try to put onto a page. So
I mean, I think you've got, like, you know, a fantastically creative mindset, and I first saw you sort of perform. It was with Dave Barbarossa on the drums, where you're doing some spoken word, and John Cooper Clarke was sort of on the bill as well, up in Hoxton, which was amazing to kind of see that. But obviously, you know, you kind of done fashion sort of video. I mean, where does the creativity come from? Big question.
I'm enthusiastic. I get excited about doing stuff, and I want to please people as well. And I think that's a lot of it, unfortunately.
You would describe yourself as a sort of somebody who wants to please people?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore, but you were.
But I think that's where a lot of it's like, you know, kind of just wanting to be in with the in people, and without sounding too much like a therapy session, but I mean, you know, I've been around a lot of impressive people as a journalist growing up, and I've always been impressed by the people that I'm interviewing, otherwise I wouldn't be interviewing them. And, and you know, I've been lucky to meet a lot, you know, Quentin Tarantino. It's like that. It's pretty amazing what I've had access to, really. But I've never felt like I was one of those people. So I've always been able to observe it, and kind of that's the thing about being a journalist. You aren't one of those people.
Yeah, in some way you're kind of on the outside.
Yeah. So that's a great period of research, you know, and I feel like that's amazing that I've been able to do that. Really.
I mean, interesting.
With experiment, you know, I was saying the other day, it's like I didn't know that you were in the audience at that show.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was very good at that point. I hadn't really found myself as a performer, because I didn't start doing it until then. Those were the first shows that I was doing with Dave like that.
Yeah.
I still didn't know how to hold a mic or anything. So I was kind of learning, and I've learned, you know, I've had quite an exposed life in that way, of sort of being on telly when I was 19, but luckily didn't get famous. And I feel like I've dodged bullets all the way through. But I'm very, very happy with what's happening right now, and it feels right, you know, and that's all you have to measure yourself on, isn't it? Is how it feels. So, yeah.
I mean, obviously, I mean, you said you know you've met some incredible people, you know, over the years. I mean, and now you feel like you're in a sort of great place. How much of those is the impact of being surrounded or being around those sort of people, and the people that you surround yourself with now? How important are they to you know, to that kind of creativity and to your you know, kind of strong mindset?
I mean, I think I was learning from, you know, from access. I mean, it's a privilege to be able to get into anyone's mind, isn't it? When you're young and doing your research, you know, that's a really good thing to have done. But now, like, you know, I had a really beautiful crowd, small, pushing friends who I know have got my back, and I love those people. You know, I think you've just got to have good people around you, and it helps. I just feel, you know, having people, I've been so depressed at points in my life when you feel like you haven't got anyone around you. You're so dreadfully alone. And it's kind of, I think I just decided, like, say with starting Cold Lips and doing all of that, and now with Ambit, it's kind of, it's great bringing people together. And I get, you know, as I get more confident with it, you bear more of your soul too, and that gets easier. That's I just told someone in, you know, in a cafe, you know, in the arts cafe around the corner, something deeply personal, and he's just so supportive about it. And it's kind of, you know, that sort of stuff. It's it's, you've got to trust the people that you're around.
I mean, I think that, I mean, talking about, you know, that person around the corner that kind of understood what you were saying. I mean, you know, empathy is something that I think, you know, kind of generally that seems to be kind of lost. You know, it's not as important for people. People just kind of lost that. Something, you know, when you find people like that kind of understand what you're going through and can kind of see things from not just their own perspective, but from somebody else's. I mean, you know, they can be really important people to you, even if they just kind of come into your life for a fleeting moment, just give you those kind of boosts that you need.
100%. I mean, you give out what you get back, don't you? I think that's really where I've got to with it. And if you can give out your best, you'll get your best back, hopefully. And you've got, it was actually a tantric guru who told me that your heart is a heart that will keep on giving love. And it'll keep on beating, and it'll keep on, you know, until it stops. But it's kind of endless how much love it can give. So although that might be difficult to understand at some points, it's you've got to give out, haven't you?
And how much you kind of like do you rely on your gut instinct, to kind of get you through?
I try to, but it's not always great. Because I get enthusiastic and I want to do everything. I'll take on too much, and I'll ask people what they think sometimes now. I'll ask other people what they reckon on things and listen to that. But I'm also learning to just make decisions faster as time becomes tighter. So you kind of get better at just deciding what to do. I mean, I'm supposed to be making a zine for an artist, Sam Jackson, who I love, and he's done a portrait of me. So
wow.
He's doing this exhibition. It opens on the 19th. Is it the 19th of July in Covent Garden?
Okay.
So that's the 19th of July, which it's actually really quite soon.
Quite soon. quite momentous for other.
I'm going to produce a zine as a catalogue for him that we've got to get to print on Monday, basically. I mean, on the week that my book's out in Hull, kind of hilarious. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm like, really. That's an insight. And I'll just do it. And I've just done all those lovely reviews for.
Oh yeah, for the Move magazine as well. How did you manage to get those?
I get them in, and Jim Slavounos did one. And Gilda Ray did one as well. So it's a nice selection of writing in that one. And I've read so many books for that.
You seem to consume an awful lot of books. It's a big task, isn't it?
It's healthy because I think I work for Ambit magazine. Coming in as their editor, I'm their incoming editor. I take over. Beautiful. From Bryony Bax, who's been training me for the last year as managing editor, and I kind of, it's good to understand your culture, isn't it? And to read, it's good to read. It's good to read, kids. What can I say? I mean, you're as good as you follow, or what your influences are. So,
it's kind of like that sort of old program, isn't it? With the "Why Don't You" program. Switch off your TV set and go do something more interesting. I'm not sure how many people are going to get that, but there you go.
I get you.
Showing my age there. But no, it's right. Yeah, with absolutely with kind of reading. And so, how are you finding the kind of interest in poetry? I was reading that poetry, especially amongst under 35s, is kind of rocketing.
I think it's because poetry saves lives, actually. And I think in these times where there are so few facts, when it appears that there should be more because we have access to more information than we've ever had, yet we're in sort of a factless environment. But yet there's data, but that's all over the place. So I think poetry is a natural way to understand life and to express yourself, and it's a basic human privilege to do that. And everybody should write poetry. I mean, it's a basic way to diarize, to understand, to get to grips with your psyche, and understand what's going on, and for people to have that withdrawn from them or not understand what that is. There's some people think that poetry can be very pretentious, and maybe they haven't been exposed to straight up literature. Literature shouldn't be scary. It's like it resonates. That's the whole point. And you should be able to smell it and all the rest of it. So it's yeah, I think that's why there's a resurgence of it, and it's cool. I mean, ultimately, to express yourself, isn't it?
I think there seems to be a more of a kind of merging or a sort of spillover of sort of poetry into music, or vice versa, however you want to look at it, which perhaps is, you know, putting it, I hate to say more into the mainstream, but it's giving it it's giving it an extra dimension. You know, the sort of musicians are using, kind of incorporating poetry a little bit more.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's huge. Like the literature music crossover feels really big at the moment. But yeah, it's, I don't know. I think that all arts are kind of doing the same thing in many ways, but which is just expressing yourself, isn't it? So yeah. I think it's the fact that we can all publish our own work now, though, like whether that's on Instagram or on our own blogs or whatever. And I find that an interesting part of culture at the moment is how the filters work on that going forward. And you know, how will that happen, and when shareholders own publishing companies, and kind of how it all manifests. But yeah.
How are you finding your in terms of sort of age groups and you know, kind of like sort of collaborations across age groups, you know, because there's, I think certainly in certain, you know, kind of swathes of society, there's still a kind of big, you know, kind of gap or divide between, you know, and we always like to kind of compartmentalize based on kind of age groups, you know, the kind of the Gen Z and millennials and etc. Have you noticed a kind of change in who are, you know, kind of like listening to your poetry, or kind of like, you know, in terms of Ambit's readership, you know, and participation in your college projects, things like that?
You know what? I have been delighted at recent events. I supported Pete Astor the other night on Friday at Betsy Trotwood, and last night, and both times I'd got young, gay, queer kind of people who'd found out about it on Instagram. And that for me is beautiful, when you see them arriving early at a gig and writing, and actually long hands in a notebook. And I don't know who they are really until it's talk after. And for me, that's it. You know, that means that I'm still doing it. I'm still current. Yeah. I mean, you know, I've got some good people who have come through Cold Lips, and Cindy, Swiss Cindy, last night, she, you know, I popped her cherry as a performer. And yeah, you know, it's great. She came up after, and she's really grateful because she'd come from Switzerland. She didn't know anything about London. She came to my nights, and you give it. My point with all of that, you know, with doing the nights and stuff, was to continue the culture that I'd had access to, that had helped me find my way. And that's I saw that as my sort of underground duty to continue. Yeah, I was talking like Phil Dirtbox, you know, there's a Dirtbox flyer in that beneath dust jacket. Yeah, I was just saying, someone like that, he was the first poet that I heard read in the back room of his nights on Charing Cross Road. And Jock Scott, I'd had an English teacher teach me Jock Scott. How she did that, I've got no idea. But I mean, he was the first poet that I actually met, and then started going to gigs with Selena, and sort of, you know, we'd go to every single Jock Scott gig in London. And yeah, that was so that culture and club culture, kind of, that was what I grew up in. And I know it doesn't exist now because we have digital culture, so we can find people and connect in a different way. But I do think that there's something beautiful about the sort of the non-lensed nightclub, where you can be free and connect without. I mean, it's great that Fabric have just banned cameras, haven't they? And
have they?
A club, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we live in such a Foucaultian age of just, of the panoptic eye and the prison state and everything being observed all the time. And I think Jeremy Deller's film Everybody in the Place tackles that brilliantly in just saying that what the 90s were kind of mad.
Yeah.
They weren't seen, and there wasn't that fear of being. No one had a camera in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't go out with cameras. That was deeply uncool because you had to send your films to Boots.
Totally, yeah. Going out with a sort of camera, I mean, yeah, you're right. Nobody did that. It just didn't enter your kind of mind to.
No, exactly. So we did fashion shoots or whatever instead.
Yeah.
That was what the artifact of that era was. So it was quite a how that manifested was as grunge or whatever, wasn't it? As kind of like that heroin chic look that was kind of documenting what was going on. And those pictures are very cool, all of that. The aesthetic of the 90s is cool because of that, but it was very unwritten. Last night I didn't get a photographer down to document thing, and I was kind of like, God, just a bit tired of
constant documentation.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I was wondering about, it feels like sort of over the years that people have got more conservative, less willing to take risks, to do things that are different, and consequently, those that do take those risks and do different things are seen as kind of sort of paddling upstream against the tide. It's like against this sort of flow of kind of conformism. And I wonder if the things like you say, kind of about this sort of panopticon and the sort of cameras of everything being documented is kind of contributing to that, because people feel I can't let go. Because I'm worried that I'm going to get caught. I've got a whether it's a sort of high profile job or it's a well-paid job, and I don't want to risk that. So you kind of like put yourself in a straitjacket.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think Rasheen Kebed wrote about this really great in, I call her the glitch Didion, didn't I? In Moo. And I kind of like what she does about the timeline of just saying that it was sort of 2015, I think, when Zuckerberg instated the flexible timeline, so that would mean that it could get interrupted by propaganda of some sort. So it's kind of like the idea that we're creating this permanent image of ourselves, of what our history is, rather than it being something more conscious. So it's so permanent, and that's the issue. And it's also, it plays into consumer society because it's conscious, isn't it, of employment, of how the public see us, how our bosses see us, whatever it is. And I believe at the moment we're in a really primitive phase, if we don't all die in an apocalypse soon. But I think that we're programming AI for the future, and so therefore that's where a lot of the identity politics kind of play in, because we're defining so much at the moment. And that's where that intergenerational thing that you were discussing sort of comes back into play, I think, is that, we are for the first time back in I've definitely felt this, like I'm definitely felt in lockdown that I've had time to reflect on experiences rather than just reading for DJ Mag and being in DJ culture and being a 14-year-old raver. First time in my life I've been able to get off a dance floor and kind of think about what's been going on, So it's been kind of great. But what I've noticed there is that that youth are definitely now defining themselves in different terms, and it is a different gig that they're in. I mean, God, with that threat of the weather and futures and the leadership. I mean, if you've grown up with Trump and the news, being what it is now, where there aren't, you know, with trusted sources and corruption in information, you got to create your own systems. So that's the beginning of the phase that they're in, right?
I mean, do you think that there's, you know, really a kind of growing place for this, you know, kind of countercultural movement, you know, for it to really, you know, start to grow? Do you feel? No?
Well, I was just at one, to be fair enough. You know, it's like I had one last night. I had an open, you know, I had a few friends read poems. I've just been at a poetry night, but you know, I'm sure the poetry police will come and ban poetry. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's what will happen, and maybe, you know, free expression will become completely impossible. I mean, it's close enough. You have to have a certain freedom to be able to publish any free thought. So
it's hard to know, isn't it? It's hard to, you know, with from the kind of authoritarian perspective, yes, that, you know, that it feels like things are being squeezed a lot, you know, that the things are tightening. Yet it kind of feels like there's more sort of pushback against this. And I was reading an article written by a guy in the US who's I think he's at the University of Pennsylvania.
right, yeah.
And he was sort of like saying about protest, about the impact that protest has, and actually he's done research and it's proven that protest does change, does actually, you know, instead of just influencing opinion, does actually change into tangible action. You know, for example, like actual voting. So like people who are, you know, let's say kind of protesting out on the streets, that those that are watching at home, not just being impacted by with their opinion, but they're actually kind of taking that to the voting card as well. So I wonder if the, you know, those sort of physical protests, but then again, if they start to get banned because the police are giving
the rave thing the other day, I mean, that for me was quite a spectacle. I mean, post Criminal Justice Act, that was going on, like a huge rave of London. I found it kind of impossibly rebellious, actually.
Yeah.
In such a new way. And I love the trans pride movement and what they're achieving, and I think that's incredible. So yeah, I mean, hats off to anyone who does protest and puts their neck on the line like that. I mean, because it's I mean, psyops and, you know, are pretty advanced now. So to be able to shift into kind of putting your cards down and saying, I am not happy with that, it's still a really brave thing to do.
Yeah,
it is risk, and we don't know how that might manifest against us.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, the Hong Kong rebels or whatever it is.
Well, I mean, there's also, like, you know, Las Titas in Chile as well. Those sort of protests that, you know, that are going on that are, you know, kind of get sort of press and become, you know, kind of successful. At least it looks like they're going to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, applying pressure. That's why I became a journalist, because I thought that kind of telling the truth, letting the truth be known, was what journalism did. But I found that it would take me so long to achieve getting to a position of editorial power. With establishment was a lifetime's work, and I found myself in a bit of a desert and really realized that art was going to have a stronger voice. That was kind of how I felt about it, unfortunately. You know, I kind of, you know, it's sort of disappointing. But, you know, look at Julian Assange, you know, just, you know, Vivienne Westwood today just putting cake all over her face to just wish him a happy birthday. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
It's outrageous that, I mean, for me, that is the biggest travesty of all times, of our current times, really. That he's living in solitary, releasing information.
Yeah.
You know, and sure, my personal opinion on that is that, you know, if it had been editorialized a little bit more at source, as a sort of a counterbalance, it might have had more impact. He said that it wasn't his choice to do that, but you know, he made the mistake of trusting the establishment to be able to have the manpower to be able to do that. And the problem with journalism now is that it's not funded by the people. The information. The information budget of propaganda is going into false information and kind of, you know, those videos we're seeing disappearing. I mean, is that to counterbalance a sort of a conspiracy rhetoric which makes the right look less right? I mean, what is going on? And Byline are very good.
Byline Times,
but it's difficult. Despite there being so much information, to research something thoroughly. It used to take me, working at the Beeb, it would take me, you know, half a day to get a fact sometimes. And I had a month to work on a half-hour program back then. I mean, so and now there's even more information, and that's getting corrupted. It's not saying just because it's all out there that it's getting any easier to know what's going on.
No, it's very true. And I mean, you know, this kind of question of you know, institutionalism and you know, the establishment sort of comes up again and again, doesn't it? I mean, it's, you know, it's that kind of control, those of, you know, kind of information of the purse strings, you know, and breaking that. You know, I was talking to A.Y. Young, I don't know if you remember, he was in the last edition of Moo, about his efforts on climate change, you know, and getting corporates to change. There's also Cephas Williams, I don't know if you know, the 56 Black Men, you know, about the issues that he's had recently, you know, with his you know, the assault at the House of Fraser, but the corporates sort of come out with the messages, but then just don't do anything. They don't then take that step, and it's this power structure that still exists.
You know what it is? It's that there's a lack of corporate social responsibility at a basic human level. So there's no needs-based assessment at a national and international level. These people need food, these people need a hospital, these people need that, and this is the order that we're going to deliver it in. And that was done at an international level and then a regional level, and then we made our corporations responsible for spending our profit back into that system. It would be cool. But, you know, instead these stupid bastards are in a boardroom and they're just like chasing this invisible god of profit.
Agreed. Like
lunatics. And it's just not cool. It's not cool anymore. The planet is not cool. The planet is heating up, and people are physically imbalanced because of it all. I mean, you know, COVID, it's kind of, isn't that enough of an example to say that we need to look after each other? And
absolutely, I
mean, what I loved most about lockdown was just that spring and just seeing the buds emerge and the planes stop, and it was poetry.
Wasn't it incredible? Yeah. Absolutely right. It really was. I mean, it kind of sort of takes that to allow you to sort of see through.
It can stop.
What the world is about, and that it can stop. Yeah, absolutely right. Completely agree.
I mean, and it's almost like, you know, maybe it's not going to be, you know, when you're first reading about plagues, how long they last. Oh, it's going to be 2 years. That's how long they did in Bournemouth back with Robert Louis Stevenson or whatever.
Yeah.
you know, they all hold themselves up in those beautiful Victoriana sort of white deco palaces, you know, and sort of just decided, right, we're locked in here, let's make it beautiful. And I kind of, but that 2 years in times of globalization, it's not going to be 2 years, is it?
No.
It's going to be a lot longer. And that's because it's corrupted and it's just kind of grinning through it, but it's going up all the time at the moment.
But this is why, Kirsty, we need people like you to keep against it.
Yeah, and I do, you know, that's what I've loved actually, is kind of seeing my mates who are good artists, like brilliant, you know, actually it's the best artists who are doing stuff and like saying, yeah, actually I'm going to take over that building and do a little show in there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, you know, artists are cockroaches and kind of can survive, so we kind of have to, and yeah, that's the beauty of it, really. So, and unfortunately, I think the government know that we love a bit of a fight.
Yeah.
So, that means that we might not get supported entirely, and there's the ridiculous rules of being able to go on an underground station but not being able to support a local DJ. I mean, it's just it's inconsistent.
Yeah.
You know, I have one mate who's a DJ who couldn't come to my little party last night because he was too poor.
Yeah.
There's not enough money for him. So like, if universal basic income is the outcome of this, is it going to get into being a situation where we have to do stuff for that money? What do we have to do? What do we have to hand over for that? I mean, all of these pressing questions. Art, though, you know, it's a good situation for art in some ways, but But the problem is, like, how can you create if you're working all the time?
No, very true. Yeah.
And if the system gets clogged up with friends of kind of people are in the system already, and yeah, but you know, you just got to keep on making and keeping on doing, and if you've got something you want to do, just do it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I mean, just sort of briefly, I mean, the universal basic income is an interesting one. I read something from the Institute of the Future in the US about universal basic assets.
Yeah.
Marina Corbis is the kind of key think tank behind that sort of concept, which sounds. I think that sounds really interesting as a kind of alternative. You know, basically all these kind of assets out there that are people's property and are not being used, and there should be. And she describes the equitable way that those assets could be used to provide for the universal basic income. It's an interesting concept.
Well, yeah, I mean, our energy, you know, our sea power.
Yeah.
Why? It always amazed me, like, you know, in one particular country I was talking with, and I was like, well, why don't you just, if you haven't got any infrastructure yet, why don't you just set up the energy company so that everybody's got solar energy, you've got a lot of sunshine, and why don't you then just feed that into the grid? Yeah. And then and actually in Oman they do that. You know, they all have free energy. Yeah. And then they sell what's left over.
Okay.
Like, why doesn't everywhere do that?
Yeah.
It's like basic management, because the corruption is so thick and so matted. But you know, there's really simple solutions to things.
Yeah.
And basically, corporate social responsibility needs to be mandated. It needs to be at least 40%.
Yeah.
It should be like max tax. And it's just like a basic, like, if you're operating in a country, look after the people, you know, make shareholders of Amazon or whatever it is. I mean, you know, it's like we create it, we own it. And it's like people get so caught up in this old ideas of left and right. And it's like, no, stop naming it stuff like that. Just kind of just think about a better way to operate where there is no poverty.
Yeah.
And there are no homeless people. Why am I buying a damn sandwich for the guy outside the shop? You know?
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Why am I speaking to that guy who was a sous chef and hasn't had any work and is sleeping in the lift in his estate? Because he's not got anything else.
Yeah.
Well, I've worked with homeless people. I've done zines with them, and it makes me sick that we look as bad as America when I first visited there. You know, I thought that I was brought up to think that Britain, you know, looked after people, and looked after people, and I just see like my friends who are too ethical to strike. They should just be burning the hospitals down in some ways at the moment with how they're being treated. And how it's getting sold off. It's disgusting. It's vile. And I hate it. I really, really, really hate it. I hate the, you know, and that sort of third party blame on, oh yeah, it's like an American idea. It's not an American idea. It's like we invented it. And now we're neo-colonializing our NHS with corporate consumerism. It's sick, and it's ours. And why aren't people aware of that? Because the media doesn't teach us any better. You know, we're sick, we're mal-educated at the core, and people can't be bothered to do anything other than, you know, because we're exhausted feeding our children, living in this stupid system of 9 to 3 pick-up through schools. Serve women. It's not, you know, that's a patriarchal system, the whole school system. It's like, let the kids chill out, you know, let the kids have beds in schools, let them sleep there, you know, give the parents a bit of a break or whatever it is, you know, just make it. It's like the system.
Give them time to think. Yeah. Themselves. Yeah. Anyway, Kirsty, our time has come. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and really, really interesting chat. And best of luck for the book as well.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to reading the rest of it and seeing how many levels I'm going to be taken up from where I am now.
Yeah, it goes. I mean, you're at the tipping point of normality now. You're about to get to the great moment of the book. So, yeah, you seem normal so far.
Brilliant.
Thanks for listening to the show, and I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in for the next episode. In the meantime, it would be really awesome if you could rate and review the show and also share it with any friends who you think might enjoy it.